Hailing frequencies open. Welcome back to Trek Retrack here on Geek the F Out. I am Captain Johnny.
And I'm Ensign Kayla. I was gentle to myself this time.
You were. It's been a long day.
I keep hitting myself, yes. It has been a long day. All right, what are we talking about this episode, Johnny?
This is the Season 2 finale of Star Trek The Original Series. The 55th episode, Season 2, Episode 26. Assignment. Earth.
If you choose to accept the mission.
TVGuide.com says, the Enterprise travels into the past to observe Cold War-era Earth, where the crew encounters the enigmatic Gary 7, who claims to be on a mission to save the planet.
Cool. It makes me think of the 7 from The Boys, his name.
I can see that, yep.
All right, let's get into it. So yeah, they go back to 1968 Earth
For some reason, to observe how we handled problems in that year, question mark. What the fuck? Wait, not again. Tomorrow's Yesterday was 1969. Nice.
Okay, but like around the same time, you know what I mean?
Last time was an accident. This time they did it on purpose.
Yeah, so they did this on purpose because they learned from last time?
I guess. I don't know.
Or maybe they accidentally did it last time, but they knew that could happen. I don't know. Anyways, but they also accidentally intercept someone's transporter beam, and a guy named Gary 7 with a black cat, aka Isis, beam on board, which I was like, the cat needs to change its name. Is it a cat? And he realizes...
Like the spy agency in Archer used to be ISIS, and they had to change the name of it after certain events. Yeah.
Yep. So he realizes they're from the future, since Spock, who's a Vulcan, is there, which I was like, okay, like I guess they don't interact with Vulcans where he's from. And apparently he's from another planet, but, you know, they can't find that planet. And he was beaming to Earth to help Earth survive. And he tries to escape, but they stun him. And then we have Spock petting the pussy. And I get that reference now. And Mr. 7 escapes with a device that looks like damn it, I just forgot the name and I just said it before.
Sonic
screwdriver. There we go. Jinx. And he beams down into a secret vault in a room, and a secret computer comes out, but it doesn't recognize his voice. Or no, it does recognize his voice, but he's like not supposed to be there, I guess. And then he finds out the 2 other agents haven't been heard from in 3 days, and this is one sassy computer, which I love. And apparently the Earth science and tech has surpassed political and social advancements, so they are there to correct that and make sure Earth turns out peaceful. And the agents were supposed to make a malfunction in the US's rocket with a nuclear warhead into space, but they didn't. And he finds out that there's only an hour and a half before it launches, and he just sits there petting his pussy. Which I was like, bro, you have an hour and a half. Which, I mean, later in the episode, we find out he can just transport there in like 2 seconds. So that's why he's like in no rush. But at the same time, like, you never know what can happen. So I was just kind of surprised that he was just sitting there.
Yep.
So then Kirk and Spock beam down. Spock is in a beanie again. And a woman who we find out is who we find out is Roberta Lincoln. She comes in Gary's room. I just call him Gary for most of the episode, FYI. And Gary thinks she's one of the agents, but she's clearly not. She's a secretary for the 2 of them who thought they were doing research for an encyclopedia. And the typewriter ends up typing everything she's saying when he asks her to tell him what she's been up to the last 3 days. And she's like very shocked by that and is like, I'm out of here. But then he finds out that the agents died in a car accident near the rocket, which doesn't make sense to him, which we'll talk about later. And Spock and Kirk arrive at Gary's place, and Miss Lincoln calls the police, and Gary walks through the portal and the vaults right into the launch base. So that's why he was just sitting around petting the pussy, because could just immediately be transported there. Mm-hmm. And the cops show up, and just as they're about to get arrested, Scotty beams them up, including the cops, and then beams the cops back down, which Miss Lincoln also sees. So now there's like 3 people that, you know, see all this shit that they shouldn't, or experience this stuff. And on the Enterprise, they find the rocket launch area, which the first time I watched this, I didn't realize how they knew where he went. And then I realized the second time, I was like, oh yeah, they talked about it earlier. Gary hitched a ride in the launch director's car and takes the elevator up the rocket, which I was like, why did he have to hitch a ride in his car? And it's literally the launch director, which, I mean, I guess it makes sense because, you know, he would have clearance to everything. And, you know, I guess Gary knew he was going to the rocket to inspect it before launch.
So, yeah, probably. I have 2 questions about this. One, who puts a name placard on the windshield of a car? Like, it's not on the dashboard, it's on the windshield. That doesn't make any sense. 2, he hid in the trunk, which I'm fairly certain this is before trunks had inside, like, emergency safety releases. So the I guess the implication is that he used his sonic pen, I'm going to call it a sonic pen because it's essentially a sonic screwdriver, but a pen, to pop the hatch and get out. But I just thought it was funny.
Lock and drop it.
Like,
yeah, I was thinking about that too. I'm like, were you able to get out of trunks back then?
I'm pretty sure you couldn't now.
Yeah.
Just used his it was
sonic pen.
I don't even think it was something you could do in the 80s. If it was in the 80s, it was just starting that they put the safety releases in.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So then Kirk and Spock beam down to the launch site, but immediately get caught and brought into the control room, which I was like, why are they brought there and not like a interrogation area? And, you know, they ultimately decide to go through with the launch, which I was like, how do you know they haven't fucked with things or just did other things to make this launch go poorly? I felt like they were very much just like, fuck it, get on with it mentality.
Get on with it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Miss Lincoln accidentally opens the secret vault in Gary's room. And Gary, meanwhile, is switching up the wires on the rocket while Isis is like walking all over him, which I was very worried Isis was going to fall. Which, granted, like, a cat is less likely than a human, but still, I was very worried about that cat.
Yeah.
And Scotty sees Gary working on the rocket and tries to beam him up, but Miss Lincoln intercepts it by accident before he's done. And the rocket still gets launched, and Gary tries to get control of the rocket, but to make it malfunction and veer off course. And he also arms the warhead, and on the Enterprise they're realizing the warhead is heading towards Europe/Asia, and Scotty decides to risk calling Kirk. So Miss Lincoln hits Gary when she realizes what he's doing and takes his sonic pen, and he tries to tell her he's doing this to help the country. Meanwhile, Kirk and Spock are able to get away with a nerve pinch, of course, and they walk in on Gary and Miss Lincoln. Spock tries to get the computer to detonate, but can't figure out, so they decide to trust Gary after all and let him detonate it 100 miles above the surface. And they realized that the Enterprise was supposed to interfere after all. When they looked back in their records, it showed that it detonated 104 miles above the surface, which is what just happened. So they're like, we were supposed to be here anyways. And Isis is now a hot lady, but then changes back.
Yep.
So she's McGonagall, essentially. And Kirk and Spock tell Lincoln and Gary that they have some interesting experiences in store for them, and then they beam back. And Spock says, live long and prosper. Without the hand, though.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, way to end an episode. And I was like, interesting experiences, so are they gonna... Is Isis gonna watch? Are they gonna threesome with the pussy? What's happening here? So, I'm curious. What do you think really happened with the two agents? Do you think it was really a car crash?
I don't know. He seems really like put off with that. And why would they be in a car crash when they have a teleporter?
Good question. I don't know.
Yeah, so
Do you think like other agents interfered or something?
Maybe. It's possible.
I'm also very confused where they came from, because he said like they've been there for generations, but they're humans, but then they're from the different planet. I don't know. Did you understand it at all?
Yes, but because I have knowledge of background stuff as well as future Easter eggs and things.
Okay, do you want to explain it to me then?
What did you think about this episode? Did anything about this episode strike you as particularly weird?
I mean, the whole thing.
Why? What?
I don't know. First of all, we're like dealing with Earth again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It made sense for the like the both the like race to the moon and like, you know, the arms race and Cold War and everything. But I don't know. Tell me.
This was essentially a backdoor pilot for a show that never ended up getting made. There was supposed to be Gene Roddenberry wanted to have a show based on around Gary 7 and his adventures on Earth as a supervisor. Because he says he's supervisor 194. They later, in different shows, start to, and it's really only recently, like the last 5 years, they start to mention the supervisors and tie them into other things that already exist in canon. But yeah, this was basically the first script. Like, this was a script that didn't have any Star Trek references in it at all when it was first written. And then it was adapted to be this kind of backdoor pilot on Star Trek.
Okay, that makes sense. So then, yeah, were the people, like these agents, born on Earth and then trained? Because they said they were there for like a long time.
It seems like it. So like they're selected and taken away to train, and then they come back to Earth to do their job.
Oh, okay.
It's
so
like
he is originally, so he's not originally
human.
from Earth.
No, he's a human being from Earth and from the 60s, if I understand it correctly. Like he just he was chosen to be a supervisor, was teleported away, trained, given all the information and gadgets and whatnot, and then sent back to Earth to be a supervisor.
So do you know any more about this mysterious planet?
No. The planet, no. There's another race that comes up in Star Trek The Next Generation called the Travelers, who can they can travel through warp and space-time without a ship. Like, they just think about where they want to go, and they essentially teleport there.
Is it kind of like the I'm trying to think of their name, the bald dudes in Fringe?
I've never watched
The
Fringe.
Observers.
I watched Daniel Green's summary of the first. Was it the host show? I think so. But yeah, the supervisors would kind of be like what I got the gist of what the observers were. Yeah.
Yeah, because they can move throughout time and space.
Well, the supervisors can't do that on their own. They need technology, but the travelers can move through time and space.
Yeah.
So the travelers would be closer to supervisors. I mean, travelers would be closer to observers. Supervisors are agents of the travelers. Now, they didn't used to be. Only recently, within like the last couple of years, where they tied together like that.
Interesting. Very interesting. Fascinating.
Roddenberry had a lot of ideas for shows, not all of them good. I told you before we recorded, or maybe it was when we were talking about the episode. This is one of the episodes I remember seeing most throughout, like, the years. It's one of the ones I remember most vividly because I remember seeing this episode. It was probably like a marathon on Sci-Fi, like when I was in the middle of my Next Generation fandom and I wanted to see what the original Star Trek was about. And I watched, this was one of the ones I saw, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Because it's not Star Trek. Like, they're there.
It is very different.
Like, Kirk and Spock, and they're supporting characters in this. Gary Seven and Roberta are like the lead. They're the protagonists. It's their show. Like, it's an episode of Star Trek, but that's the case for... I didn't have any concept of what a backdoor pilot was back in that day, but that's essentially what this is. He was trying to get the show picked up on its own for Gary Seven, but it didn't happen. Some people...
that makes a lot more sense now.
There were some comics starring Gary Seven and some novels for Gary Seven, but he never got a show.
Poor Gary Seven.
Poor Gary Seven.
Poor Gary Seven.
Yeah. So it's an interesting episode. I enjoyed it more this time around than I remember liking it before. But I think part of that, and this is a minor spoil. I mean, if you saw the thumbnail, this makes me really think of like an American Doctor Who. When I watched this before, I have not seen any Doctor Who, and I was not a Doctor Who fan. Now that I've watched all of Doctor Who, this really feels like an American Doctor Who because
it kind of does.
His pen is basically a sonic screwdriver, like, because with everything he can do with it.
Did this come out? When did the OG Doctor Who come out?
The early 60s. They were on the second Doctor by the time this came out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially I've only seen some of the new ones, but it definitely has the same vibe, especially because, like, you don't always know what the Doctor is up to. So, like, we didn't really know what Gary was up to and his plan. And
he's enigmatic and knows things that he shouldn't know. Like, he knew what Vulcans were, even though, you know, he's not in Starfleet and he's not from the future. How does he know what Vulcans are? I mean, I guess he technically said he was from the future. I think they grabbed them out of their own time. I mean, it's still all...
Yeah, it's confusing.
Not really fully defined. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting concept. It very much makes me think of, like, if this had gone on, it could be the American equivalent of Doctor Who. Might not have run as long, but it certainly had the same, like... guy traveling through time and space with Doctor Who had K9, the robotic dog. Gary has Isis, the polymorphic cat. Yeah. And a young, plucky
She's a animagus
sidekick who's out of her depth because she just wandered into this. She thought she was doing encyclopedia stuff.
She was fun.
Yeah.
And there's some
she was
good comedic humor. I did like the green cube, and it was like describing her, and then it says she has like a mole on her shoulder and then a somewhat larger star-shaped mark on her, and she's like, that's enough.
Yeah.
Cuts it off. I'm like, wait, I wanted to know, where's this large star-shaped mark? Yeah, that was funny. That's pretty much all I have for lines and moments, though.
Yeah, I didn't really have anything specific for that. So we can go to that's what they said.
All right.
I went first last time, so you can go first. Yep.
Okay. Totally perfect body.
What are you doing? I wasn't finished.
I'm going as fast as I can.
Yay! Another short but sweet.
Yes. Indeed.
That will bring us to episode trivia from Memory Alpha. The typewriter is a Royal Emperor, which could type from a cassette tape recording of the text. Now, it's not clear what that means. And there was a link, but it's not loading well. It's Internet Archive, and the images aren't coming up. So I'm not sure if it means like auto dictation, like speech to text, or if you have one of these typewriters, you plug in a cassette tape, hit record, and type, and then it can save it to the cassette, you pop it in, and it plays the tape, and then it automatically types what you already had typed. Because I don't know...
How would the cassette tape know what you've typed?
Because you stick it in the typewriter, and it probably has its own record button, and then you type while it's recording. Is it just going to record
the sounds?
There's probably... I mean, it could be like touch-tone phones. It could be like touch-tone phones where it doesn't necessarily make an audible beep for each letter you type, but it has a different tone that it plays for each key that you press. I don't know. I'm just guessing because I can't find any information about it. I from the links that they do, and when you search for Royal Emperor, which could type from a cassette, you get a lot of stuff about Rome.
So it's a real thing.
It was, yeah.
Huh. I feel like it would be the opposite way. Like you would talk, like record on the cassette and then put the cassette in, and it would type out whatever the cassette says.
It could be, but that feels like it would be
hard too.
Hard for the 60s.
Yeah. Huh. I'm fascinated.
Yeah, I can't. And they made too many typewriters. I don't know. Maybe if I find more information before we premiere this, I'll put it in the chat or something. But yeah,
sounds good.
So it's interesting.
Very.
This episode was designed partly as a pilot for a new series featuring Gary Seven and his mission. Star Trek was teetering on the brink of cancellation late in its second year, and Roddenberry hoped to get a new show going for the fall season. The first draft pilot in November 14, 1966 had no mention of Star Trek or its characters. The Beta 5 computer contains many components from the M5 Multitronic unit in the Ultimate computer. That was obvious, that the screen with the flashing lights and the globe.
I noticed that as well.
Along with Khan, Colonel Gary Seven is one of the few humanoids to ever have manifested. They use the word insensitivity, which sounds weird to me, like invulnerability to the Vulcan nerve pinch, because Spock tries to give him the Vulcan nerve pinch in the transporter room, and it doesn't work on him.
Okay. Yeah, what's the right word for that? That's definitely not the right word.
I would say invulnerability, or...
It just doesn't work on him.
Yeah. I mean, insensitivity is probably correct. So, like, if you Vulcan nerve pinch someone and they go unconscious, they are sensitive to it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's sensitive.
Yeah, it makes sense, but I feel like there's a much simpler way of saying
we don't use insensitive in that way a lot, right? We use it in the, like, you don't have manners, or you're insensitive. Not, I'm insensitive to, I don't know, bread. Like
stab wounds.
Yeah.
They don't affect me. Bread.
Impervious, invulnerable, impervious, like, yeah, I don't know.
Fuck. There's a simpler word. Fuck. Shit, tits, balls. Immune?
Yeah, immunity. To have ever manifested immunity to a Vulcan nerve pinch. That works too. Yeah.
I think that's what I was trying to think of. Anyways.
This episode first aired on the 29th of March, 1968. 6 days later, on April 4th, 1968, there was indeed an important assassination, that of Martin Luther King Jr. However, the coincidence goes beyond this. Spock says that the same day as the assassination, that the U.S. was launching an orbital nuclear warhead platform. The King assassination was the same day as the launch of the unmanned Apollo 6 Saturn V rocket. The same Saturn V rocket, amazingly enough, also suffered a serious mishap and went off course. The details of the mishap with the Saturn V on April 4th differ greatly in detail from the events of Assignment Earth, obviously, because of TV episodes. However, Kirk comments at the end of the episode that the real events were never generally revealed at the time. It makes sense, therefore, to assume, within the context of Star Trek's fictional history, that there was a massive cover-up about the Apollo 6 mishap, and that a false cover story was put out to hide the truth that they were launching a nuclear weapon into orbit. This episode uses footage of the Apollo 4 Saturn V, the only previous test of that rocket. Chronologically, the closest candidate to Spock's other prediction of a government coup in Asia would be the July 17th military coup in Iraq that brought Saddam Hussein to power, the 17th of July revolution. One of those things, those weird, like, coincidences of TV predicting things that actually end up happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, when did they... Did you say when they filmed it?
It was filmed...
I mean, no matter what, it's obviously before it aired.
January 2nd to January 10th, 1968.
Wow. That's crazy tits. Crazy tits.
There was... Since you brought her up, I didn't put this in because it was
put it in.
Where was it?
About Miss Lincoln.
Oh, yeah. So it says, this is the only episode of the second season to have Roddenberry credited as producer instead of executive producer. The first time he had received such a credit since the first season. Roddenberry wanted to be very hands-on for this episode as he hoped to turn it into a spin-off series. He rewrote Art Wallace's script and was heavily involved in production, including sets, props, casting of actors, and even the costume of Terry Garr, the actress who played Roberta Lincoln. He insisted on shortening her miniskirt to be more revealing, much to the anger of costume designer William Ware Thies. Garr had a very unpleasant time filming this episode, perhaps stemming from Roddenberry's involvement in decisions regarding her costume, specifically the length of her skirt. The hem was taken up so much it became very distorted. In the interviews since, she has refused to talk about Star Trek in any way.
Damn.
Yeah.
That sucks. I
noticed that it looked like skort. Like when there was a shot of her from behind, and the way the skirt, it like almost like folded in shorts. The middle, like it was shorts. Yeah. I didn't notice really anything off about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like we've seen in the Starfleet uniforms, like you can literally see their butts if they just like slightly bend over. I feel like this was not that short, but that really sucks that happened to her, and fuck that. Fuck that big time.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because one, nobody should have to go through that kind of stuff. Yeah. She was good. Like, I liked her as the character.
Yeah, me too.
It's the same. Fun.
That's too bad.
They both were. It's a show I would probably watch if it had gotten episodes.
Yeah.
Well, but, that does it for trivia.
Men gonna men.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. Love the patriarchy. Okay, I don't love it. Memes?
Yeah, that'll bring us to spoilers without context. Since Ensign Kayla went first for... That's what they said. We will bring my spoilers without context up on the screen. And I had to do Doctor Who and his sonic screwdriver, and that's the second Doctor who was the Doctor in the 60s at this time. Okay. And his sonic screwdriver...
I thought it was a cigarette or something. Or a cigar.
I could see that. Yeah, his sonic screwdriver is very much just like a silver stick. Like this is a laser pointer that I have.
Don't point it at your eyes, Johnny.
But his sonic basically just looks like this.
Yeah, it does. At least in that picture.
And then I had to use Heather Graham from Austin because her outfit reminded me of Roberta's costume. Made me think of her. I had to use Kirk from Tomorrow Is Yesterday when he was getting interrogated and wouldn't talk, like, because it's basically the same thing. And then for Isis, I had to use Catra from She-Ra, Princess of Power, because she also turns into a cat.
Yeah, nice. Princess of Power. Very good.
And then we will bring Ensign Kayla's spoilers without context up on the screen.
Yeah, so I've done this a few times before where I just focus on one thing and do a lot of variations of it. So I was focusing on Isis, the black cat who, is telepathically talking to him, not talking out loud, but the rest of these are talking cats. So the first one is Gigi from Kiki's Delivery Service. The next one up top is Salem from the OG Sabrina, the Teenage Witch Show. Then we have Luna from Sailor Moon. And then we have Thackeray Binks from Hocus Pocus. So, yeah. I had to.
Very good. Before we started recording, Kayla says, "You're going to laugh at me," and then she sent them, and I laughed. It's perfect, though. It works great.
Yeah, because there's a lot of black cats that can talk, apparently.
There are, yeah.
It's a thing.
All right, very good. That, then...
Thank you.
Does it for spoilers without context. Before we rank the episode, Ensign Kayla, why don't you tell everybody where to find us and what's going on?
Yeah, you can follow us on Instagram at GTFO channel. If you want to email us, our email is channelgtfo@gmail.com. If we put out all of our info about shows coming up on Instagram, so make sure to follow us there, and some fun memes and stuff like that. And every Friday is our Lost show, our watch rewatch. It's Johnny's first time. We've popped his Lost cherry. And so every Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 Eastern, we will be talking about Lost. And we will be joined by Ralph for all of the season reviews, recaps, whatever you want to call them. And yeah, so 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 Eastern. Some will be pre-recorded, most will be live. And yeah, Trek Retrek every Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern. And make sure to smack that like, smack that subscribe, and smack that bell icon. That's it.
All right. Ensign Kayla, how do you rank Assignment Earth?
It's just so, like, it's similar to others, but different, especially because, you know, the, like, Spock and Kirk are, side characters in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it still was intriguing. Like, I, you know, was on the edge of my seat, as I like to say. Wasn't sure what was going to happen, and, like, couldn't really tell if Gary was a good guy or bad guy until the end. And, you know, that whole backstory was really intriguing. But at the end of the day, I don't really think you necessarily need to watch it, but it's still entertaining, and it's a different kind of episode of Trek. As we said, it's definitely not a normal episode of Trek. So if you're looking for a normal episode of Trek, I would say don't watch this. But if you want something a little bit different, I would say you can watch it. So I'm going to go with Lieutenant.
Makes sense. I'm going to go with Lieutenant too for basically the same reasons. Because, like, while it is a very, very, like, it's weird because, like I said, I remember when I watched it before, I did not like this. I thought it was boring, but that's because I just wanted Star Trek, and this was not Star Trek. It was like, what was the one that we were watching that I kept saying it felt like an episode of The Twilight Zone? Oh, it was the Purge episode.
Oh.
Whatever it was.
Oh, yeah. What, Red? Something with Red.
The Red Hour was what was happening in the...
Yeah.
In the show. I don't remember.
I don't remember.
No. I'm scrolling
together.
through the list. Return of the Archons.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Like, that felt like an episode of The Twilight Zone. Like, this felt like an episode of Mission Impossible or Doctor Who if it was American or things like that. So it's definitely a good episode. It's just not really a Star Trek episode. And like I said, I did like it more this time than I did previously, but I'm also going with Lieutenant. So a unanimous rank of Lieutenant for Assignment Earth.
Very good.
Our next episode will be Season 3, Episode 1, Spock's Brain.
Why are the crew of the always about Spock?
The crew of the Enterprise pursues a mysterious woman who has abducted Spock's brain.
That's it.
That's
funny. Sounds like a good one. I can't believe we're in Season 3. Crazy. And how many episodes are in Season 3?
I don't think there's 24. There's 2 less than other seasons.
Okay.
So.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're 2/3 of the way through.
Yeah, we are. Crazy tits. All right. Well, until next time, peace and long life.
Live long and prosper.
Bye.